Hi, welcome to another exciting lesson in the MikroTik CHR series. Today we're diving into IP services, the backbone of how you interact with and manage your MikroTik CHR. By the end of this lesson, you will not only understand what these services do, but also how to use and secure them effectively. So what are IP services? Think of IP services as the entry points to your MikroTik CHR. They allow you to connect, manage, and control your router. Whether you are configuring it through a graphical interface, accessing it via a terminal, or automating tasks, these services make it all possible. To view the MikroTik service, you navigate to IP Services menu, and here you see the listed services, all enabled, around 8 of them. The first on the list is API, available on port 8728. What is the MikroTik API? The MikroTik API Application Programming Interface is a powerful feature that allows external programs to communicate with your MikroTik CHR or any RouterOS device programmatically. It provides a structured way to interact with the router, enabling automation, integration with other systems, and more efficient management. There are at least 4 things you can do with the MikroTik API. First is command execution. The API allows you to execute the same commands you would run in the MikroTik terminal here in WinBox, but from an external application. Number 2 is data retrieval. You can pull information about the router, such as interface stats, active connections, or resource usage in real time over API. Number 3, automation. You can leverage on the MikroTik API to automate repetitive tasks like creating users, managing IP addresses, or configuring NAT rules. And number 4, integration. You can connect your MikroTik router with external systems such as billing platforms, monitoring tools, or custom dashboards utilizing the API service. So whether you want to automate tasks like creating VLANs, managing DHCP pools, or configuring routing rules, whether you want to build custom monitoring tools to track bandwidth usage, device status, or client activities, or you want to integrate with platforms like Radius or custom databases to manage users programmatically. Or maybe you just want to create web portals for end users to interact with router functionalities, such as managing Wi-Fi access or bandwidth limits. The MikroTik API service is your go-to service for all of that. MikroTik RouterOS is equipped with API and API-SSL, both serving the same purpose. The only difference being that API only is insecure and suitable only for testing, whereas API-SSL is encrypted with SSL, available on port 8729 by default, and recommended for production environments where security is critical. They are both enabled by default, and if you want to make changes to any of it, like disabling it or changing the port number associated with it, you can just double-click and open, make the needed changes, and close it, or disable if you do not want it active. Next, we have FTP, File Transfer Protocol. The File Transfer Protocol, FTP, is one of the essential IP services provided by MikroTik CHR. It facilitates transferring files such as configuration backups, scripts, and firmware between your router and a client device. The FTP service operates on port 21 by default, and it can be accessed through FTP clients like FileZilla, WinSCP, or even a web browser. If you double-click on it, the same rule applies. You can choose to change the service port or disable or enable the service. Here it is enabled. Let me just show you briefly how it works with WinSCP FTP client. You are free to use any FTP client of your choice. Performing a quick Google search of FTP clients will flood you with many options to choose from. So we open the WinSCP client, go to New tab, change protocol to FTP. In the hostname field, you enter your MikroTik CHR IP. Username, you enter the CHR username, usually admin. And password, you enter the password you set earlier. Same admin password you used for logging into WinBox. Then hit login. You see it takes you to the directory where files are stored in your MikroTik CHR. You can easily upload files to this router or download from it the way you would with any remote web server. Let's simulate that. Let me pick a file from my local computer here. So I go to desktop and let's drag this OVPN file from my computer to the CHR. You see the transfer is in progress and now it's completed. Let's close this out and go back to WinBox. Then go to Files. And here, you can see the OVPN file we uploaded sitting right inside the CHR. So this is very useful, and we will employ it as we progress in this course. It is often best practice to change the default port 21 to a non-standard port to avoid automated attacks. You can easily double-click on it, update this port to 2121 and apply. And of course, next time when you want to make connections to the router via FTP, be sure to use the new port you have just configured and not port 21, as that will not respond. Next is SSH, Secure Shell Access. SSH is a powerful and secure protocol for remotely accessing and managing your MikroTik CHR. It provides encrypted communication, ensuring that sensitive data such as login credentials and configuration commands remain protected from eavesdropping. SSH is essentially a cryptographic network protocol that allows you to access the MikroTik terminal remotely, run commands directly on your router, transfer files securely using SCP or SFTP. SSH operates on port 22 by default and is widely regarded as the standard for secure remote access. All data transmitted via SSH is encrypted, unlike TELNET or FTP. And I have to mention that you can also use SSH for file transfer using SFTP, which is more secure than FTP. From the WinSCP client application, you can follow the same method we used earlier, only that this time, you have to select SFTP as a protocol, and of course the port number should be 22 and not 21. Again, port 22 is widely known as the standard port for SSH, so anyone attempting to act maliciously against your router will likely be attempting attacks against this port. So just like we did for FTP, you can simply double-click on it and change the port to any other number of your choice that is not already taken. Let us say 5050 for instance. And to test it out, we can launch the PuTTY client, same application we used in lesson 3, to access the VPS and install RouterOS. In hostname field, we enter the IP address of the CHR, port we enter the 5050, we change SSH port to, then leave connection type as SSH, click open, accept the security prompt, and proceed normally with login, just like we demonstrated earlier. Now, back to WinBox. Just like the other services or protocols, you can disable SSH by double-clicking on it and hitting the disable button. Then this router becomes inaccessible over SSH. Next is TELNET. Just like SSH, TELNET allows you to connect your router and manage it via the command line interface. While TELNET is useful for accessing and managing your router, it lacks encryption, making it less secure compared to protocols like SSH. This is because TELNET transmits data, including passwords, in plain text. Therefore, it is considered insecure and is rarely used in modern environments, unless the connection is within a trusted, isolated network, which of course, our publicly accessible MikroTik CHR is not. So I would recommend you don't use it. If you must, or you just want to check it out, then you can follow the same exact method we use for SSH. Launch PuTTY, input the server IP address here, use port 23, and hit open. That should get you into MikroTik CHR terminal over TELNET. Depending on your CHR network environment, this insecure option might not even be allowed by default on a public network, but you can give it a try. You should use TELNET only in legacy systems. By legacy systems, I mean older network environments where SSH isn't supported, or in testing and troubleshooting in a controlled lab or isolated network, strictly for testing purposes, or maybe for temporary access when SSH is unavailable and quick access is required. Next is WinBox, the ultimate tool for managing MikroTik CHR, the very same tool we have been using so far. WinBox is a fast, lightweight, and user-friendly graphical interface for managing MikroTik routers. It is a native Windows application, but can also be used on Mac OS and Linux via emulators like Wine. WinBox provides a comprehensive visual interface to configure, monitor, and manage your MikroTik CHR or any RouterOS-based device. As demonstrated earlier in Lesson 5, you can easily grab that from the MikroTik website and run it on your Windows computer and follow the instructions earlier provided to connect. That connection takes place through port 8291. I never get to disable it as it remains my primary method of accessing my MikroTik CHR. For users on non-Windows OS like Mac or Linux, you can head over to www.winehq.org, download and install the latest Wine, and run your WinBox application using the Wine emulator. And finally, we have WWW and WWW-SSL. WWW and WWW-SSL are services that enable you to manage your MikroTik CHR through a web browser. They provide access to WebFig, MikroTik's browser-based graphical interface, for configuration and management. While WWW uses HTTP, which is unencrypted, WWW-SSL uses HTTPS, which is encrypted, ensuring secure communication. WWW is vulnerable to interception and recommended only for internal networks, whereas WWW-SSL is secure, protects data, and is recommended for production. Again, just like we demonstrated in Lesson 5, all this requires is opening a standard browser of your choice, popping in the server IP in the address bar, hit enter, then the MikroTik CHR username and password, then click login. Of course, for WWW-SSL to work effectively, it's important to enable HTTPS certificate for added trust. We're going to dwell more on how to generate and install an SSL certificate in a future lesson. To ensure our MikroTik CHR is as secure as possible, I've chosen to disable all IP services except WinBox. This decision is based on the fact that this router is already publicly accessible, which makes it a potential target for malicious actors. Let's take a quick peek at the router logs to see why this is necessary. So we go to logs. You see, by simply being online, this router has already experienced multiple random attacks. If we look at the logs, you notice numerous login failure attempts. These attempts originate from various IP addresses worldwide. This is clear evidence that malicious actors are actively scanning for and trying to exploit publicly accessible devices. To minimize the risk, we'll disable all unnecessary services for now. We'll revisit and enable specific services later when needed for demonstrations. So we navigate to IP services once again, select services to disable. We hold down the control key and click on each of the following services to select them. We select API, API-SSL, FTP, SSH, TELNET, WWW, and WWW-SSL. Please be careful not to select WinBox, as it is the service we are currently using to manage the router. So we disable selected services. We'll click the red cancel button to disable the selected services. Verify that only WinBox remains enabled. And yes, it is. This concludes our basic overview of MikroTik IP services and how to manage them. By disabling unnecessary services, we've taken an important step towards securing our router. In the next video, we'll focus on creating and managing IP pools in MikroTik CHR, which is an essential aspect of network configuration. Stay tuned.